gentlemen, and good evening to our guests this evening. We have before us this evening Tumi and Malcolm, and I'm sure this is the third series, and most of you don't need, or the two guests who we have this evening don't need any introduction. This is obviously the third series of the Black Management Forum Cape Town branch leadership seminars. I also understand that some of our colleagues are currently experiencing hardships in connecting to the line this evening due to load shedding. So I think in the interest of those who have joined the webinar, we will then proceed with today's session for this evening. And I think mine is just to now step in the place of Moshe, who will be joining us this evening. He has informed us that he's experiencing load shedding until 1830 hours this evening. But I think, colleagues, again, a warm welcome to this evening. The Black Management Forum takes pride in a partnership with our colleagues in inviting you and giving you a warm welcome to this evening's session again. We did over the past weekend celebrate the 45th existence of the Black Management Forum. And I think, as you had heard in that clip, our president mentioned that one of the key functions of the Black Management Forum is to create thought leaders and to ensure that managers are really empowered to step in when they're called upon to do so. And hence we've decided deliberately on this partnership to give guidance and to enhance leadership and coaching abilities of our members and teams in partnership with our colleagues. And I think one of the ways which we believe this can be achieved is through both the personal and professional customized and unique corporate enhancement and skills development amongst our members. And I think our colleagues will probably unpack the topic a little bit more in detail than I can ever attempt to do so. I'm only the head of the Black Management Forum in the Western Cape. I do want to give you a disclaimer that I'm by no means an expert when it comes to coaching, but I do think that it's one of the ways that we can enhance our skills so that we can perform more efficiently and more effectively as leaders in our respective corporate environments. And I think it depends on the context and the learning style and the different careers and the aspirations that each individual person has, and as well as the collective teams have. This process of leadership development and coaching is usually facilitated by professionals such as our two guests today, who are accredited coaches. And I think Tumi and Malcolm will unpack that, as I've said in my earlier remarks. And I think for us as the BMF, it's most important to give our members access to this valuable career enhancing services by approaching corporates and partners such as Tumi and Malcolm to negotiate and to specifically focus on areas that can create this value for our members. And I think after the initial experience of the value of coaching, members or individuals are often more willing to pay for these services themselves. And we do want to again thank our partners in offering this value add to our members. And I think these sessions will be more about introducing coaching for more, especially for team cohesion and for high performance and innovation. We will also ask or talk about leading teams remotely as we continue to empower our members to exhibit relevant leadership according to the circumstances which we find ourselves in, more so with COVID. And I think they will answer questions more specifically on how team coaching differs from individual coaching, the benefits that team coaching brings about. I think Malcolm will place or give more focus on this topic, and I think Tumi will also address this issue. When team coaching is needed, as a supervisor, what can you learn and what can you take from experiences of working with people, different people and from different backgrounds, and what one can do in order to increase the team communication and thereafter achieve broader efficiency in different organizations. And I think most importantly, speak more around team cohesion. So colleagues, again, I would like to warmly welcome you to this evening session, and I will then hand over to my colleagues. And I think Dumi will go first in terms of giving us a bit of an insight on today's topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronela, for welcoming us. And welcome to everyone who has tuned in today, and hoping that the load shedding will have mercy on all of us and we'll be able to complete this session without any interruptions. So thank you again, Ronela. Today we are going to be focusing on team cohesion and how we build cohesive teams and highly effective teams using innovation, and also looking at what the role of leaders is in putting together these cohesive and really effective teams. So I'm going to start by talking about the team cohesion, and then Malcolm will do the effectiveness of a team after myself. And I know I've rephrased your topic differently, Malcolm. You will introduce it correctly. So let us start about team cohesion. When we're talking about team cohesion, what are we really talking about? So what I like to do is to really start looking at the components that form these team cohesion. There's two words there. There's team and then there's cohesion. When we're looking at a team is really a group of individuals that are put together to help achieve a common goal. But the fact that individuals have been put together doesn't necessarily mean that they are a team already. We know there are different stages where a team becomes a team. I want to focus today on this word cohesion. So how do we get to making this group of individuals to be a cohesive unit that we can say is a team that can work towards achieving common goals? Because I'm sure you've experienced in the workplace a group of people masquerading as teams, but not really being teams. So how do you really do this team cohesion? I want to introduce you to a concept that is called being part of a whole. So when we're talking about a team, we're already talking about a cohesive whole. So a team is a cohesive whole. So this whole has to do certain things. So when I'm talking about being part of a whole, I'm talking about how do you play a part in making this whole cohesive. So that's going to be our focus today. I want to use an analogy of baking a cake. So if you're a baker, you will understand this very nicely. But if you're not a baker, when you bake a cake, you need ingredients that you have to put together so that the cake can come together very nicely. Now, when we were talking about being part of a whole, we as individuals are part of different wholes that we operate in. Most of us, we are part of families, if not all of us. So we operate in that context of a family. We are part of a family. We are part of communities. We are part of a greater society. And from a business context, we are part of teams and we are part of a greater organization that we operate in. So you can see that the key ingredient here is the individual. In us having cohesive teams, key individuals are very important for the team to be cohesive, or for the whole to be cohesive. Now, I want to just direct for a moment the attention on the individual. If we are going to have a cohesive whole, each individual has to play their part. Back to the analogy of that cake, it means each one of us are ingredients towards baking this cake. We need to show up as the right ingredients when we come to baking this cake. Some of us are flowers. We are the flour. Some of us come as sugar, salt, baking powder. And it means for the team to be cohesive, the common goal of baking a cake that is soft, moist, and it tastes good. Each one of us have to show up as the right ingredient. So it is very important that when we are in a team, we remember that element of being the right part. So for us to bake this cake, we must all be the right ingredients. So we have to deliberately choose to be the right part in every hole that we operate in. So here's the thing. When you're operating in a team, you cannot show up as salt when you are meant to show up as sugar. So when you show up as salt, when you are meant to be showing up as sugar, it means we're not going to have the kind of cake that we want to bake. So it's very important that as each individual, we show up as the right part. And this brings forth an introduction of another concept that there's a quote by Gordon Ramsay. He says, self-awareness breeds personal responsibility. So as individual parts of a team, we have a responsibility to choose to show up as the right part. But for us to be able to do that, we must first know who we are. And I know in the last session that we had, we spoke about self-awareness. So that self-awareness is very important. So back to the cake, if I am showing up to this cake baking project, who am I? Am I the sugar? And what is my role as the sugar in the building of, or in the baking of this cake? So your self-awareness is very important, being aware of who you are in this process. And then deliberately choosing to be the right part. And here's the reason why. I've got 3 reasons why being the right part is very important and why we need to choose to be the right part. Number 1, the whole functions well when each of the parts function well. So when all the parts function well, they render the whole functional. The second point is that the whole is made weak by the weakness of its individual parts. It might be only one part, it renders the whole dysfunctional. If we look at the cake again, if we have baking powder not showing up to the cake baking project, we're not going to have a cake. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that we all have to choose to be the right part. So those 3 things are very important for the cohesiveness of a team to happen. Bearing in mind that we all have to show up as the right part. Okay, so when we're talking about getting to know who you are, 3 things for me are very key. Your values are very important. Your beliefs are very important, and your behavior is very important. So when you look at yourself and say, I am this part that I want to show up within a team, it's very important to look at, what do I believe? What are the beliefs that I hold that might have an impact in how I interact with my fellow team members? Will my showing up because of my own beliefs ensure that this team becomes cohesive, or am I going to be disruptive within the team? So knowing your beliefs and how your beliefs will impact the team is very important. Our beliefs dictate our behaviors. So how I show up on a daily basis, it's me telling the world, this is what I believe. These are my beliefs. We will see by how you really interact with other people, how you behave. If you are the kind of person who always criticizes other people's ideas, but you never come up with your own ideas, there is a belief that is at work. You may not know right now, but there is a belief that is at work. So it's important to have awareness of what are the beliefs that are running our lives, so that we know how we can self-manage when we show up within the team context. So if my belief gets me to show up in a way that is disruptive, when I'm aware of that, then I am empowered to choose how I want to show up. So I'm able to manage myself. And that is why it's important to have that knowledge. Same applies with our values. Our values, those principles that dictate how we make decisions on a daily basis. And when we have awareness of what our values are, we would know how we operate when our values are being trampled upon within a team context. So when you know that when certain values that you hold, when they are trampled upon by an individual, your response is being defensive, as an example, you are able to then say, I am now aware of this. So how I want to show up is not being defensive, but in a way that will help to build the team. And your behavior, there are behaviors that are habits. So looking at yourself and looking at how you show up as a habit, it's very important, so that you then can recalibrate and say, I choose to show up differently so that I am the right part. So these are the ingredients, the components that make you the right part when you are operating within a team. So I was talking about the individual team members, right? We all have that personal responsibility to be the right part to render the whole functional. But now there is a key ingredient that is very important, and that's the chief baker, right? And the chief baker in this instance would be the leader of the team. So what is the role of a leader in this process of building a cohesive team? I always say leadership begins with self-leadership. So as a leader, you would need to really be a leader that can lead themselves to ensure that you're able to help build a team that is cohesive. Otherwise, you become that leader that is disruptive in this process of building a cohesive team. So managing yourself is very important. And again, it's about being self-aware and also having awareness of who is in your team, what makes them tick, what are their strengths, and what are their weaknesses, and how my showing up as a leader actually affects them or impacts them as an individual, which in turn impacts them in how they show up within a team context. So I want to introduce you to this concept that as a leader that is operating as a leader that has to build a cohesive team, you need to be a people-focused leader. If the team has to be cohesive, you need to be a people-focused leader, not a self-centered leader. So the leader that is looking and saying, who do I have in the team and how do I actually leverage the talents that I have within the team? I'm sure you've heard of there's a quote, I think it's Theodore Roosevelt, where he says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you've got to be a caring leader that ensures that people are able to do things for you and you are in turn able to achieve results through them. So I want to share with you John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, if you haven't heard of those 5 levels of leadership. So John Maxwell talks about 5 levels of leadership, and the first level that he's talking about is the positional level of leadership. So he says at this level, people follow you because you've got the title. That's the only reason they follow you, right? So if you're not a people-focused leader and you're only relying on your title as a leader, building a cohesive team is going to be an uphill for you, right? So it's very important that as much as we all start at that level of positional level of leadership, it's very important that we take it a step up. And the next level of leadership, according to John Maxwell, is permission. And here he talks about people giving you permission to lead them. So people, they'll start following you because they want to, not because you have done something that says we will follow them, right? People give you permission to follow you because you've connected with them. So at this level, human connection is very important. So as a people-focused leader, it's very important that you ensure that you connect with people. And I know a number of leaders who are afraid to talk to their teams about their families, their aspirations, where they are, health, what are your fears, you know, getting to really know the people that work in your team. Again, that quote, Roosevelt quote that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. At this level, when you're connecting with people, it's very important that people feel you care for them at an individual level. The third level of leadership is production. So people respect people who produce results, right? So when you produce results, people will follow you and say, that is the kind of leader I want to follow. In his project, I know things happen. You know, we produce results. So the results that you've produced or your reputation of producing results will get people to follow you, want to be in your team and want to be a part of what you are about, what you are doing. But those 3 levels, important as they are not enough. The 4th level is the level that I advocate for you to focus on, which is the level of people development. So if you are a people-focused leader, people development is very important. We know they say leaders don't develop followers, but they develop other leaders. So it's very important that you become that kind of a leader. So within your team, when people feel like they will be developed as part of producing results, they're not just here to produce results, but they will be developed in the process. They would want to be part of your team and work with you. And when you do people development well at this level, what do you do for people catapults you to the next level, which is the 5th level, which John Maxwell calls it the pinnacle level. So at the pinnacle level, people follow you for what you stand for who you are and for what you stand for. And here I want you to start differentiating between leadership being and leadership doing. When you do the people development level very well, your leadership being, in other words, how you show up as a leader dictates how you'll be able to build a cohesive team. So who we are as leaders unconsciously, dictates or determines whether we will build cohesive teams or not. There are people who build teams out of fear, but if you're a people-focused leader, you will build a strong team that will really produce results for you. So when we're talking about team coaching, we are talking about how do we get a team to become a cohesive unit that will produce the common goal that has been set in front of this team. Everyone owning that common goal and everyone taking personal responsibility to ensure that that goal is being achieved. And everyone understanding that it's not just about the leader, but it's about each one of them. So you might have this leader that is people focused, but if the team members have not come to a point where they have the self-awareness that helps them to move to that personal responsibility component, then it becomes difficult to build a cohesive team. So everyone has to be able to say, I know who I am, I know what my role is in this team, and I will show up in a way that will help to build this team cohesively. And that's how we produce cakes that are soft, moist, and they are good tasting at the same time. So how am I doing from a time point of view? I just want to close with just a few points. Can I do that, Malcolm?
Yeah, you got about 30 seconds there to me.
30 seconds.
I'll give you 30 seconds of my time. Don't worry.
Okay, awesome. So the last thing that I want to share is that your leadership being that I'm talking about is that you need to show up as modeling leadership. So you need to be that conscious leader that is able to lead themselves. You need to enable build a culture that is enabling for that team to be built in the process. You cannot skip communication with clarity when you are building cohesive team. It's very important that you communicate with clarity. And leveraging the strengths of each team member is very important, and encouraging support so that people are not just individuals, but they are part of baking the cake. Encouraging support through sharing information, caring for each other, trusting, and also ensuring that people are able to go ask for guidance. And lastly, regular check-ins as a team is very important. A team that does not have fun together, it's not a nice team to be part of. So have fun as a team. It's very important. That's how you would get to build a cohesive team. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tumi. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be back again. For those who don't know me, my name is Malcolm Phillies. I'm an executive coach and team coach. And yeah, so we're talking about team coaching this evening. And Tumi had a nice introduction in terms of just the various parts that makes up this lovely cake, and to kind of bring us together. Now, when we have a cohesive team, the question is then what next? And so when you have a cohesive team, it means that you got a team that is focused on one common particular purpose. Now, within an organization, we don't create teams for the sake of just creating teams. There's a purpose for every team. And the question that I normally sit with is when I get asked to engage with a team is the first question I ask them is, what is your mission? What is your vision? What is your mission? Why do you exist? What is your purpose around here? And those are very important questions. And it's quite interesting how sometimes when you go into a team of 10, you will find 10 different versions, or at least 5 to 10 different versions of what it is that they are there to do, what it is that they need to achieve as a unit. And so while individually we know what we need to do, the question is how do we bring it together? Now, team coaching wants to provide this platform or create an opportunity for this cohesive team, not just to be cohesive, but to also be a high-performing team, to be able to meet and exceed the organizational objectives for them as a team. If you look at a sales team as an example, we don't want our sales team just to deliver us benchmark results. We want them to be such a team that they will exceed benchmark. Because if you benchmark, what are you? You're average, essentially. And we want to say that we are the best performing team. Now, in order to create that high performing team, there's a few elements in a high performance team that needs to be there. One is that there needs to be an element of trust. Without trust, the team will not be high performing. I'll be watching my back because Tumi is doing this and this one is doing that. And that's going to be a challenge for us. So we won't be able to, even that you can pick that up when it comes to team cohesion, is that the team cohesion is not there. The other thing that needs to be that we need to have a clear communication strategy. We need to have our own team charter that articulates our values. So when I speak about respect, Moshe speaks about respect, Tumi speaks about this whole concept of respect. The question is, on that value, are we on the same page? Because remember, respect for me is that I look somebody in the eyes. For Tumi, it might be, don't look me in my eyes. But when we come to our organization, question is, how does that show up for us? Now, team coaching creates a vehicle for the team to get to that point where we can create a system that is not just meeting organizational goals, but also create a sustainable environment that the team is able to thrive and not just survive. And that is a key thing. So as a team coach, what we do is we don't, so from a one-on-one, I think one of the questions that we've got is what's the difference between one-on-one coaching versus team coaching? Now remember, for team coaching, we need to get them into a direction of achieving an organizational goals together. And that can be one particular that can be one particular aspect in terms of we got a project. So this project, we need to, so myself, Tumi, and Ilona get together and we need to run this particular project. We are new to each other. Guess what? We're not a team yet. We are individuals on a similar path at the moment, but not yet on the same journey. And team coaching brings us to say, you're not just on the same path, but let us bring you together on the same journey with your differences, with the diversity that exists within you, with your different parts, whether you're the flour, the sugar, the baking powder, all those other wonderful things, we bring them together. The other thing is, Malcolm, for you to be able to function optimally, what do you need from the rest of the team? To me, for you to function optimally in this, what do you need? Now, you will see that from an individual coaching perspective, we try and expand the capacity of the individual. And that is quite a little bit easier because when I sit with Moshe, I will chat to Moshe, I will play back to him whatever he's saying to me. When I deal with a team of 10, I've got 10 different personalities that I need to work with. I've got 10 different views or points that I'm going to deal with. But the one thing that I need to come to as a team coach is to say, what is the culture? What is the things? What's happening in the system, in the team? And then play that back to the team. We articulate now, when we do coaching, we start from the premise that the person or the team that we are working with is able to solve their own problems. And I know that some people say, so what's the use of a coach? Guess what? We ask you those very interesting questions that make you think. We are thought disruptors. We are process disruptors. We kind of get you to think a little bit differently. So my company's name is Mind Flip, and that's exactly what I try to do. I try to flip your mind so that you can think differently and behave differently. So as a team also, what we try to look at as team coaches, we say, okay, fine, I'm hearing the words that the guys are saying, but what is the team actually saying? So they're all using different words, but there's something that they are saying. When I hear the team speaking over each other, I play that back. I say, guys, have you noticed that we haven't heard Tumi fully? Have you noticed that Moshe didn't manage to articulate his thought? Then we start looking at, wait a minute, but we got this value of respect, but we're talking over each other. How does those two hang together? Then we start creating an action plan. How are we actually going to do this as a team? You will find that a team coach literally steps back and looks at the team as a system and says, how do I maximize their capacity? Help them to maximize their own capacity, if I rather put it that way. So from a team coaching point of view, it's really about how do we maximize the team? For a team to be a high performance team, we need to have a common goal. We need to have measurable results that we are able to measure. We need to have clear communication strategy. We need to have a clear conflict management strategy. So when we know that there's going to be a difference of opinion, how are we going to deal with that? We need to put that into our team chart and say, when we have a conflict, guys, this is our process for dealing with conflict. Let's respect each other enough to go to the person that you have an issue with. Or if it's a team thing, this is how we bring it into the meeting. This is our etiquette. This is the way we behave. This is the way we show up. So it's really bringing in terms of the dynamic to say, yes, as a cohesive team, we are going to achieve a common goal. But the key thing about achieving that common goal is that we need to be able to do it in an environment that is sustainable, that allows us as individuals and as a collective to thrive. And that is what team coaching does. So generally people that make use of team coaching is those who are starting a project. I worked with a team now of around about 7 of them. The team is 7 months old, even though the structure of the team has been in place for many years. Why? There's a new leader that came in. With a new leader, what happens? There's a new team dynamic. So the team is new. So we need to put them on a journey together. And there's something that Tumi mentioned. She mentioned about the leader being vulnerable to be able to share about themselves. Within team coaching, we allow the leader to be vulnerable, but we also build the resilience of the team. Because remember, as you as an individual need to be resilient to overcome obstacles, to be able to persevere through tough times. As a unit, as a team, you're going to go through some obstacles. You are going to go through some tough times. But that particular aspect is how do we build in the resilience of the team? So as a team, how do we do that? And that's how team coaching also facilitates that dialogue. Now, team building versus team coaching versus team consulting versus team facilitation. There's a whole host of different team development modes or modules that you can do. And I won't say one is better than the other one. You need to find what is appropriate for you. Team building, as an example, is something that comes in. We do a little one-day thing. We come together, and Tumi said, a team that doesn't have fun together is not a nice team. And that's where we need our team building, and it can be done in different ways. We also need to have a team alignment session. Team coaching takes a bit of a longer journey, where we have a few sessions together, where we actually create sustainable change for the team itself as a unit. So if you look at coaching from an individual perspective, coaching doesn't flip the switch and we fix you and we give you a tablet and we say, Moshe, you are now sorted. Now you are the best leader ever. We have a journey with you over a few sessions, however that might be. The same thing with a team. We have a journey with you. And that's where we check in. Then we say, guys, how are we doing? What's happening? What's happening? The system is what we work with. How do we create a system for a team to thrive and not just to survive? And the team coaching can really unpack that for you. Once we get to our team charter, you will see that this is where we stand. This is who we are. We have got one common mission, one common vision, one goal. And guess what? Even when we have differences of opinions, we are able to deal with the issue in such a way that we don't feel offended, but we actually complement each other. We understand the diversity, the conflict that arises in the team. We also know how to work with that. Sometimes as team coaches, we get called in to resolve a conflict within the team. And that is where you can see. We mentioned the thing about values. Values always come back. When there's conflict, it is somebody's value that has been compromised. When you get angry, it's one of your values that has been compromised. So an example is when somebody shouts to you, shouts at you in public, that is one of your values that's been compromised. I'm feeling disrespected. That's why you get angry, not because he shouted in public, but because you feel disrespected. So what is the team values and how does the team unite and kind of move forward together? So from a team coaching perspective, that is what we're trying to do, is to really get guys to move forward as one unit in the same direction, in a vehicle together where they can live together and be able to work together and to succeed. So that's just on a high level from my side. I'm very conscious of time. So, but that, I thought that would be my introduction to team coaching. Moshe? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I must apologize first again. I was load shedded until 6:30 and I was trying my alternative stuff, but it failed me. But I think I came in at the right time. Thank you, Sis Tumi. Thank you, Malcolm, for your key introductions. And I picked up that one of the key things, I've written a note down here, is that values and leadership and all of these things can be on the wall, but if we don't behave in a certain way, then it doesn't help, especially in the corporate environment. The team needs to see the behavior that is happening. I'm not sure how, I missed the first 20 minutes, but I just wanted to say, BMF, Cape Town, BMF is about managerial development and the managerial leadership and leadership development. And a key thing, and I've just noticed, this afternoon when I was thinking about this, that it's the month of June, which is Youth Month, and 45 years ago, it was, when the youth decided to speak up against improper leadership and being forced to study in a certain language. But also in 1976, BMF was formed, and they also celebrated 45 years this year. And that's a key thing. I actually remember 5 years ago, we were celebrating 40 years of BMF with Professor Wiseman Goshu, and he was talking on the same thing. So I'm quite happy that we're all on the same theme. I just wanted to pose a question then on those behaviors. Maybe I'll start with the question on what are the types of behaviors and how does a team agree on those behaviors? Do they need to agree on those, or what are the types of behaviors? Like I said, in my view, the values can be on the wall and everything, but we need the behaviors that are going to drive this team and to drive this. And it starts from the leader. So okay, and then what I'll do, the panel, I'm seeing the questions on the chat. Please, and I'll take the questions from them. Would you like it to do it like that, Tumi and Malcolm?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Perfect.
Okay, so
maybe coming to the behaviors.
Sure.
Yeah. So coming to the behaviors, let's look at and I mean, to have the values on the wall and all those kind of things is one good thing, but that's just for people to see. And you will be able to experience it. So what we normally do is, so I'm a very practical person when I do team coaching. I get the team to draw it out. I ask them the question, what does this thriving team actually look like? And when we step into, how do I as an external person know when I step in there without asking a question, just seeing and observing, what is it that will be there? The team needs to define that. If I say, guys, respect needs to look like this, then I'm imposing something on the team, whereas the team culture might be different. So the team will actually define to say, this is how we're going to show up. This is how we are going to communicate. This is how we're going to do that. So that behaviors is driven by the team and defined by the team. One thing that we try to look for is if there's inconsistency. So if Moshe says, this is how I want to, and Tumi says, this is how I want to, and Malcolm says this, we can't have three ways as a team. We need to have one team culture. Then as a team, we need to say, how do we incorporate that theme? Is there maybe a fourth one? Or is there one that we all now agree that this is probably the most common one? And then we do it in that way. The other thing about behaviors are fluid. So whatever we agree today, remember in 2 months' time, there might be a new team member coming in. So we need to educate them also. And then also life changes. But as that, and I like what Tumi said, that those check-ins, do we check in with each other to say, as a team, are we still on the same journey? Is our behavior still matching what we described, or do we need to redefine that? But the team ultimately needs to define what those behaviors are that they believe is acceptable within their unit.
Thank you, Malcolm. Tumi?
I'm still on mute. Thanks, Moshe. I like the point that Malcolm has pointed out, that a top-down approach of the behaviors may not be as effective as possible, but getting to understand what each person understands when we say integrity. What does integrity mean for you? And what does it look like? That's a good phrase, Malcolm. What does integrity look like? So that people can then air out from their own experiences, what they believe integrity looks like. And then the team must contract as to what for this team integrity looks like. So it becomes a co-created list of behaviors that talks to these values, and that allows ownership of these values that have been identified. It's no longer values that just came from the top, but we now own them because we have identified what these mean for us from a behavior point of view. Thank you, Michelle.
I could not agree more. I think the behaviors, and I just want to go back to both of you, maybe just plant something at the back of the mind, is that it's so important that the leader, and I've seen it in some corporates, it's so important that the leader also espouses these behaviors, because you can't talk about them and expect them from the team, but you as the leader don't show these leaders. But I just wanted to read some comments here. Zizi Ponyanga said, common goal in a thriving environment, in an environment that is thriving. I like that. And then there's a question that's, how does one know that conflict with another team member is able to be solved? And how do team leaders decide when a member is not a good fit to the team at hand? That's question number one. And then there's another question that says, how can one influence these principles towards the thriving team when there's also a senior leader who's not actively investing in building the team's resilience. So we have 2 questions there. Maybe let's start with the one where, to me, you can start with how does one, the conflict one, and when there's a team member, and when do we decide when that team member is not a good fit? And then we'll do the second one of the, how do we influence these principles?
Okay. So one of the key things that Patrick Lencioni in his book, when he talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, one of the things that he talks about there is the importance of having conflict in a team, right? And not a disruptive kind of conflict. So you want a team that's not afraid to have conflict within a team. So this encourages diversity of ideas. So it's not like we are fighting, but is that we are putting across ideas out there. So when you're looking at a conflict that is constructive within a team, that is a kind of conflict that we welcome in a team, because you don't want a team that just all say, we all agree type of a team. But when you've got a team member who over a period of time, the pattern is such that this is a disruptive kind of a team member. As a leader of that team, you've got to now wake up and stand up and say, I do have an element within the team. And if you're a people-focused leader, having one-on-ones with your team members is one of the key things that you would do. So sitting down with this team member and getting to understand how come they don't seem to be on the same page. So getting them to understand, back to the values that we spoke about, Moshe, getting them to understand, for you, what do these values mean? What does this team mean for you? What do you see your role being in this team? And when we're talking about this being a cohesive team, what does that mean for you? And when you give people airtime and people realize that, going back to caring and connecting with people at an individual level, then people are able to then maybe have some awareness to say, oh, maybe I was not aware that I'm disruptive or I'm causing conflict within a team. And then you can, as the leader at an individual level, contract with that individual member to say, how can we improve that? How you show up does not disrupt the team. How you show up does not create a disruptive kind of conflict. Because you don't want people to feel like they are being censored and they cannot, voice out how they feel, but just at an individual level. So this is where coaching leadership style becomes very important, because you as a leader, you will then coach this particular member of a team to become a more productive and non-disruptive member of a team that will over time become part of the team. Just like any other client, when you are coaching them, that we've got these people who say we've got uncoachable people. There will come a time when you've done everything as a leader and the person still does not. That person will have to make a call as to whether they still want to be part of this team or not. And those are critical and difficult conversations that every leader should be able to have. Thanks, Michelle.
Moshe, if I can just add in there, when it comes to it with conflict, it's like we need to believe that conflict can be resolved, because sometimes we step back and we say, it will never work and whatever. But you need to be brave where you actually say that it can be resolved. And that's why it's important that we also understand that we have a process of dealing with it. Now, just like as an example, when there's a conflict, do I get all the information before I actually step into it? Do I actually get the background to what is that happened? Am I dealing with the issue or am I dealing with a person? Because when I deal with a person in a conflict situation, what you try to do is to keep everybody's defense levels as low as possible so you can have the open dialogue. The conflict is not the issue. The issue is when we get personal with each other. And when a team member is persistently disruptive, That is when, as a leader, you, like Tumi said, you've got that responsibility to manage that. Whether it's be from a one-on-one perspective. And if the member is willing to change their ways and kind of connect with the rest of the team, that's 100%, and we continue with that. But then if the member is resistant to that and persist in their destructive ways, we've got internal processes. Every organization's got an internal process that you need to follow. So it's not that we're saying just discipline them, get them out. There is a process, but let's not shy away from the conflict, but let's step into it and say, okay, fine, it can be resolved. What is the best way to do it? And for me, the best way is always, let's see what's the best way for us to get everybody's defenses down, where the heat is a bit lower, so we can actually have an open dialogue and say, let's agree that there is something that's going on here. What is it that's actually going on? Sometimes we argue about something in a meeting, but we no longer arguing with the topic on the table. We're arguing about something else. Tumi's talking about one thing, I'm talking about something else, and there's this actual thing that's on the table. Let's agree on what the actual problem is, and then we'll be able to resolve the conflict. A lot of unresolved conflict is really because we don't get to the issue. We more get to people than what we get to the actual issue in that.
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, some good comments again here. Good point to me. Thanks for the feedback. And there's a quote from a very big English word there, but it's look, I actually thought, you know, I was fortunate enough to be in attendance when one of the previous presidents of BMF, Bonang Mohale, launched his book, Lift As You Rise. And I thought it encompasses this ethos of team coaching, because, you know, basically saying that, you know, you cannot move up unless you lift the others as well. It's been a common thing and a common theme that happens with Black managers and sort of Black executives in the corporate world, that they get to this top position and they get invited in and they get a seat at the table, and then they forget about the others. I have a question I'd like to pose. Maybe we need to open it up. Is, you know, how does the Black guy, you know, who's been now given the position of transformation head or head of HR, that's the kind of positions that they get, or the CEO of ABSA, how does he survive, and how does he navigate this, you know, to be not seen as not lifting as he rises his people, but, you know, to also get to convince the other people who are waiting for him to fail at the top that there is actually something that needs to be done here. I've raised these because it is a BMF forum, and I'd like to, you know, take this free advice from you today, that we, you know, how do we navigate these? And I think we need you know, I must also commend the fact that, you know, young Black people on a Tuesday 53 Black people sitting on a webinar. It's very commendable. I like this, and I think we need to do more of this, you know, and it's when you see something like this, we need to commend it, just before I forget about that. But how do we get these Black managers in corporate to be confident, but also to not be arrogant, but to lift as they rise?
Okay. There is this phrase that says, one is too small a number to achieve significance. And when you step into leadership with that mindset, you will understand that you are going to need people around you. So if you look at successful leaders, they've got a community around them, right? And that community comprise mentors and sponsors. So people who will be able to talk on your behalf when you are not present, or people who will be willing to back you up when you are present and you are presenting ideas. So the challenge that we face is that when you are put in a position and you know you are already on a back foot, the first thing that you need to do is that, who are the people that I can build a community with from within? And commonalities are some of the things that bring us together very quickly. So we go to people as individuals, not as a collective. A collective will build a wall. Even people who might have a little bit of maybe affinity towards you, when they are within a group, there is that group think type of a thing, and they would be resistance to you nonetheless. But if you're able to then go to each individual and ask them, with this role that I have been put in, what do you believe is the one thing I need to do to succeed? And if you had, let's say you have an executive of about 10 people, you're going to have probably different ideas of what is that one thing, but that already has given you a bit of insight as to what is in people's minds. And if people were willing to give you ideas, I would say keep going back to them. Even though you've got your own ideas, keep going back to them. There is nothing that wins people over than them thinking they are baking the cake. I'm going back to my baking the cake analogy, that they were part of baking this cake. And as soon as people have some sense of ownership in this, they don't want to see this cake, flopping. So over time, you'll be able to win people. So I'm saying winning people as a collective sometimes is really an uphill, but winning people as individuals, it's something that I'm advocating. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah. From my side, what I would say on that is that we need to realize that, as an executive, so remember when you were a supervisor, you were a specialist supervisor. You were a supervisor of the accounting team or the HR team or whatever it might be. Then you started operating as a manager. So which means that your level of strategic intent and focus changes. Now, when you get to a senior executive role, you're no longer worried about the day-to-day operations. The challenge is that your day-to-day operations must still continue and be strong. And so what you need to do is to realize, to say that my role now has moved from being a specialist to being a facilitator of skills to maximize the output of the organization. And for me to do that, I need to make sure that there's an environment. I need to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to actually to come up with the ideas. I don't come up with the ideas. A senior exec actually has, yes, they might have a long view and strategic view. The how, so you get strategic formulation, then you get strategic execution. The execution sits lower down. And that's where you actually need to depend on them. And for that, you need a proper team that is empowered. And if once a team feels empowered, they feel like they're part of that cake and they feel that they contribute. Do they feel valued as part of that team? As a leader, my job is not to do everything. My job is to facilitate an environment for people to be the best that they can be. And if I cannot do that, I will burn on top because I'm trying to do everything and I can't do everything. That's the reason why I've got that. I've worked with leaders that they themselves are not the technical specialists, but they were over. And remember, the higher up you go, the more multidisciplinary functions you have to manage. So you might be the COO, and under the COO, you might have an HR league, you might have an IT league, you might have all these different. So you're not specialist in all of that, but can you build the teams and create environment for those specialist teams to be able to thrive? And once you're able to do that, people respect you, people will move with you, and they will kind of give you that discretionary effort to make you look good. If you understand that your success is really dependent on the success of your teams.
Thank you so much. That really resonates to what you just said, both you, Tumi, and Malcolm. I was recently exposed to the book, The Art of the Arrow by Nick Christelis, and he equates this leadership thing to the arrow. They say, you've got to pull back the arrow before it launches. But he divides the arrow into three parts. The pointy arrow part in the front is where the leadership is. They set the direction, strategy, and vision. And the middle part of the arrow, which keeps it going, he actually says that's the management part. And I think sometimes we play in the management part, whereas you've got to take the leap and become the leader and not be the manager. And then the bottom part is where the values and the behaviors sit. that also are very important. So all of these parts are important, but you need to know which part you're playing in on this arrow. It was quite a good analogy that I saw. I see there are some comments and not questions, so I'm going to ask for final comments from our panel. I'll start with you, Malcolm, and we finish with the lady, and then I will. But I mean, I must say it has been it's been good. I'm mad that I got in the middle, but this has been great. And I just wanted to say, do you think this coaching thing is a new phenomenon, or maybe it's a new phenomenon to us from the townships? But I've been hearing quite a lot of it lately. Yeah. Or is it you get to a certain level and then they only tell you about the coaching?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, because in the township, when we talk about coaching, we want to have a soccer coach or a cricket coach or a rugby coach or a running coach. But when it comes to this, and unfortunately, and I think one of my little things is really, how do I make coaching accessible to everyone? Because there was a period of time where coaching was really for senior and for exec managers. If you got to a certain level, and for me, it's like you've already reached that, how do I help you transition into that? So sometimes we put leaders into particular positions, but they're not ready for it yet. Whereas a coaching journey, transitioning them into that role would have been absolutely perfect. So those are some of the things themselves, their own signature leadership style, who they are and how they actually lead people, how they connect with people, what it is that they can do to actually leverage the support of people. But just in closing from my side, in terms of, there was two questions or two that came in. The one was about influencing. And it's really, we need to get to the concept that we got formal leaders and we got informal leaders. And sometimes we got a leader on top that is very resistant to everything. And what we can do as a team, especially if you know that your team is willing, you become the informal leader in your team by starting the influence from the bottom up. Is to say that, you know, guys, as unit, this is how we're going to operate. So I've worked in teams which have got lovely leadership and teams that has got so non-appreciative leadership. Some of those where our leaders were not so appreciative that we didn't appreciate them much, we actually decided to run our own dynamic. And by doing that, the leader realized, wait a minute, there's a difference in this team, and then they can. So step up in terms of your informal leadership and say, what is it that we can do to create our own environment as well? Because remember, our environment is not based on one person. The leader can tell you also what the environment and show you, but if you're not willing to commit to it, it also won't work. And then Christopher asked a question about practical examples about building a team synergy, especially with remote. Guys, visibility is very important. And visibility in the sense of connect with your team, check in with your team regularly. Create both MS Teams and Zoom. They've got add-ons where you can create interactive spaces for brainstorming, for those kind of things online. So do that. If you go down to level 1, your team is with you. Connect with them at a coffee shop, whatever it might be, but that's how you need to be present and visible to your team. Check in with them, both from a professional and a personal level. And then just my final thought is, when it comes to team coaching is one powerful resource for you to create a vehicle for you to achieve your organizational goals. You cannot achieve organizational goals if your team cannot perform. Your team cannot perform if they don't trust each other. Your team will not trust each other if they don't know who they are as individuals and who the others are. So let us kind of do that in saying, let me understand me, let me understand those around me. Let's have a common language. From that common language, our common purpose, our common vision, we are able to do that. And if you need that support, team coaches are there to support you. Thank you very much, Moshe.
Thank you, Malcolm. Tumi?
Yeah, before I do my closing remarks, there was questions right at the top. When we started, there was a question from Tulani where he was saying the concept of leaders, build leaders, is a mantra that we should all live. But then how do you balance building leaders when there is politics? So Tulani, I just want to say to you, we are all navigating muddy waters in life, whether it's in corporate or in different settings that we find ourselves operating in. And the cure for us is focus. If you are going to keep your eyes on the politics will consume you. What is important is to keep your eye on what is that needs to be achieved and build a community around you that understands what your vision is in terms of building other leaders. And like I said, you need to have sponsors and you need to have mentors, people who will advocate for you and people who will speak for you when you are not even in rooms. And as a closing remark from my side, and Tulane, I hope that answers your question. As a closing remark from my side, leadership it's something that some people are born with and others have to be taught how to be leaders. So it's something that we can grow into. We can build the skills. But knowing what leadership doing is, just those skills is not enough. It's important that you work on your leadership being. In other words, how you show up as a leader, because that is the silent communication that you are bringing out, or that you are, you are silently communicating who I am as a leader. And people might not necessarily follow what you are saying, they follow what it is that they are observing. And a good example is, if you're a parent, you know how kids operate. They will not do as you say, they will do as you do. So your leadership being, who you are being as a leader, in other words, how you show up as a leader, it's very important. Like those examples of the values that we've spoken about and the behaviors. If you don't live those behaviors after the team charter has been agreed upon, everybody else then decides to fall back to whatever they want to fall back to. You've got to be that guide that people, when they look and say, no, this is how we should go. So your leadership being is very important. And finally, there is nothing that breaks teams than no clarity within a team. So always, as a leader, if there is nothing that you can do as a leader, the only thing that I say do is communicate with clarity. Because without that, everybody is going to be operating in vagueness, and that might lead the team to a point where you don't want the team to be. And then lastly, attention to detail as a team and as a leader as well. It's very important. Thank you very much, Moshe.
Thank you, Sister Tumi. From my side, I'd like to say thank you to both our panelists. I don't need to repeat what they said. I think Sister Tumi and Malcolm have emphasized the importance of presence and visibility and how you show up as a leader. I'd just like to do the basic notes. As a BMF person, I have to say, guys, please look out for the emails. And if you're not getting emails from BMF, contact Nam at the BMF Cape Town office. This was a BMF Cape Town event. There's an intention to, behind these sessions. This is the type of content we'd like to give our BMF members and develop them. It certainly helps me. And it is something that we would like to continue. And it's something we'd like, BMF shouldn't be known about writing the statements only when there's an appointment of a CEO, but we should have the content that is ongoing, that develops our managers, that helps our people so that they can say, this is why I joined and become a member of the BMF. So I'd like to call upon each of us to be active, to show up as future leaders and take control and take the country into our hands, not usurp the country, but take control of our destiny and be the leaders of our destiny and take it forward. And with that said, I thought it would be amiss of me not to end with a quote. Those who know me know that I like my quotes, and I know the fellow panelists have also used a couple of quotes. But on June 16, 1999, we elected and inaugurated the second president of the democratically elected South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. And when he was inaugurated, he said these words. He said, "Our country is at a place which the Setswana-speaking people of Southern Africa graphically describe as Mahube Anaka Tahomo, the dawning of the dawn, but only the tips of the horn of the cattle can be seen etched across the morning sky." I believe that we are at a similar time in our country. All of this that is happening, but it's encouraging to see young people, future Black leaders of this country get together and discuss the soft issues. These are regarded as the soft issues, but these are the critical issues. These are actually the issues that will change us, and these are the conversations that matter, that will change us. So I believe we are there, and I believe that, as he said in 1999, this is where we are. I'd like to end off with those words and remind all of us that let's not give up. Leaders don't give up. Like he said, leaders are the ones that say we can do it. Leaders don't. So let's not give up on our course. And I didn't introduce myself. My name is Moshe Apleni. Actually, my name is Pumzile Moshe Apleni. I have a Sotho name, long story. And I have, for the last couple of years, been gathering some form of education or another around South Africa. And I continue to gather education. And thank you so much to everyone for your time today. We don't take your participation and your time and your internet for granted. Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists again. Thank you to the BMF for choosing someone like me to drive this. Thank you so much.